Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. I'm your DJ and host, Sam Wilson Jr., and I'm here to bring you the history genre of black music: gospel, jazz, blues, old school classic soul, old school hip hop, today's hip hop and R&B, Caribbean, Latin, Afrobeat, Afro-Latina, blue-eyed soul, disco, go-go, line dances, and the Lost 45s. So come with me as I take you on to a trip to the history destination genre of black music, right now on the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. Welcome to the Black Soul Music Experience. I'm Sam Wilson Jr., and I have a special guest on my podcast. And this guy that I'm about to introduce is a drummer, a violinist, and a vocalist for the Real East End Brass, or REEB, R-E-E-B, a fiddle player, and for the Peconic County Ramblers, a violinist for the South Bay String Quartet, and a drummer for the Standard Jazz Company. And while he's not on tour, he's a music teacher as an orchestra director and a music department coordinator for 33 years. So please help me welcome to my Black Soul Music Experience podcast, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Troy Grindle. Hey Troy, how are you?
Doing great. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing fine. Welcome to my podcast. Glad to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Okay, so I see you've done everything. I looked at your bio and I said, wow, I can have them right here on my podcast. So we're going to begin, shall we? Now,
Okay.
America doesn't know who you are, or the world doesn't know who you are, and this is my first time interviewing you. So they would like to get to know who you are, and who work behind the scenes. So let us begin, shall we?
Okay.
Now, where were you born?
I was born in Bangor, Maine, and grew up in Ellsworth, Maine, um, about a half hour, 40 minutes away.
Now, were your parents in the music industry, or did they had 9 to 5 day jobs?
Oh, no, they had 9 to 5 day jobs. My mother actually, a little bit later in life, became a nurse. And yeah, so neither one of them were actually professional musicians. But my mother played instruments and sang and did theater, and just always loved participating in music in an amateur level.
Okay. Now, which high school did you go to?
I went to a place called Ellsworth High School. It's right on the coast of Maine. Beautiful little place, beautiful town, small town, and about 5,300 people when I lived there. So we all got to kind of know each other and really got to learn each other, you know, learn about each other, and our families were all kind of in each other's lives. It was a good growing up.
Mm. Now, which college did you go to?
I went to Hofstra University for my undergrad and did graduate work at Stony Brook and Dowling College. And my major was music education. And I also went back for administrative certification later on as part of my graduate work.
Now, what was your major in college?
So music education, which allowed me to do the two things that I always wanted to do most, which was to learn how to do classroom music, how to run a music program, how to be a music teacher, but it also made me a performer. So the performance aspect of that was really intense and very important to me in my development.
Now, who did you want to be when you grew up?
I don't think I actually had any one individual, but I knew I wanted to be a teacher and a performing musician, and I had a couple of great examples. My first violin teacher was somebody who originally was at Juilliard and decided she didn't want to be part of that performing circuit, and she became a music teacher. And her husband was in the military and played in military bands and came out and became a music teacher and had a brilliant music program and a great performing career. I knew I wanted to do that.
Was being a musician your calling?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of kids have no idea what they want to do when they grow up, when they go to college, whatever. And I have to tell you, I knew exactly from about eighth grade. I had exactly the same career path, and I wouldn't change a thing. It's exactly what I wanted to do, and that's what I've done ever since.
Now, how old were you when you started playing the musical instruments?
Well, it was a little bit early. I remember the first instrument my parents got me was the harmonica. Somewhere like first grade. They said they regretted it because I played it all the time, just nonstop. It was making music, and it's just what was in me, so I had to do it. I started violin in second grade, and drums in either fourth or fifth grade in our school band.
Now, growing up, who were your favorite jazz musicians?
Well, there were quite a few, actually. I loved Louis Armstrong, and in a kind of a different vein, very European jazz, very, very smooth. Stefan Grappelli, fantastic jazz fiddle player. And then a little bit later, I learned about Stuff Smith. I don't know if you're familiar with Stuff Smith and his work, but totally different approach to the instrument, just a real kind of gut level intensity, just total soul. So I really love Stuff Smith as well.
Now, who were your musical influences that had inspired you?
I got to say that's a long list, so I hope you don't mind. But I have to tell you, first and foremost, my father was probably, even though he never played an instrument and didn't sing, except maybe in the shower, he's probably my foremost influence. And right back in the day when you could stack a half dozen albums on the spindle of a phonograph, I don't know if you remember those days. He would listen to music all the time, and so there was always music going on. It was always different. So on one stack of albums, I could hear the New York Philharmonic, Janis Joplin, Aretha Franklin, Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, Nat King Cole, and Helen Reddy. So it was just all over the map. No limits, no musical categories. He didn't just fit into one lane. And it just, this kind of wide range, it had a huge influence on my musical life. And I think all the different things that I've been into really reflect that. Me personally and directly, some of the musicians I really admired, Jascha Heifetz, great violinist. The Beach Boys, they taught me everything I know about harmony. Fats Domino, gotta love that man. Tony Bennett, tremendous pipes. Chuck Berry, just kind of played from the heart. This guy named Jean-Luc Ponty, I don't know if you know his work, great French jazz violinist. Oh man, he just opened my brain to a totally different world. Papa John Creech, I don't think he ever gets enough credit, but man, great player. There was a band from Canada called Rush. Of course, Aerosmith was part of that in high school. B.B. King, Aretha Franklin, Roberta Flack. And through Roberta Flack, absolutely huge influence on me musically. And then through listening to Janis Joplin, I learned about Bricktop and Big Mama Thornton. Unbelievable. So, I know that's a big batch of people, and it's kind of all over the map. But that's where I'm at. Music is all music, and we just put up the walls we put up for whatever reason we put them up. I don't know. I'm not all about that. I'm kind of exactly the opposite. It should all flow.
Right. Now let's go back to the beginning. At first, you formed the Far Fiddle Club. Please tell our audience what's the Far Fiddle Club about.
Oh, I'm sorry, and I sent you a little bit of information with a little bit of a typo. It's called Far East Fiddle Club.
Oh.
Far East Fiddle Club. Okay, and it came about because I had a student one day. Now, this was a school ensemble. All right, so this happened a long time ago, early on in my career as an educator, because I did spend, as you said, I spent 33 years teaching. And I had a student who just, I was doing the classical thing, the standard sorts of things that they teach you in college and what have you. And I had a student who said, I really like Irish fiddle playing. Could I play a couple of tunes for something? Would you help me with that? And I said, sure. and just she lit up. It was a totally different experience. I had not really thought about that. I mean, personally, absolutely, but I never thought about that for my music program. And the audience responded, in a way that was just remarkable. So I looked at that and I said, this is something. And I took that and I started spinning it into, we got some Irish fiddle playing going on, but you know what, there's all kinds of stuff. Okay, country fiddle playing, you got Cajun fiddle playing, you got jazz. We would take things from every tradition, everywhere. I took things from the Middle East. I took some Arabic fiddle tunes and set them up. And so we had this fantastic gumbo of like everything you could imagine. If you could play it and you liked it, I'd put it on a fiddle for you. I'd figure out how to make that work. We worked with the rhythm section, so it was a bunch of string players, violin, viola, cello, with guitar, bass, and drums, and just ripping it up, having a great time, kind of letting loose. All of those classical constraints that everybody kind of felt very intense about, we just said, hey, this is great, I love that, but let's let it flow into everywhere else it could go. So it was, in terms of who was in the group, and in terms of the music we put out there, it was like the UN. It was like the best of what you could possibly imagine. And everyone was digging on everyone else's stuff. All right, I had a student from Myanmar. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. I'm remembering it old school. They used to call it Burma. So my apologies. But great violin player and just very, very formal kind of kid. But when she heard klezmer music, that was it for her. She just, I have to play klezmer. And she went to Columbia University, this kid, and she joined the Columbia University klezmer band. That just kind of gives you an example. I had a kid from India who was just in love with Irish fiddle music. And, just all of these we all cross-pollinated. Everyone's groove was just all good. So if you like it, bring it to the group. We'll do it. We'll find a way to make it work. And we just had a great time.
Wow.
No
Wow.
boundaries. The only walls are the ones that you build for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's something new that I really learned. You're giving me food for thought. That's really something new.
Yeah, I used to tell them the only rules are the rules we say are the rules. So from there, it just total flow.
Right. Now, how many years have you been a drummer for the Standard Jazz Company?
Well, I started that group in the early 90s, and we played all over the east end of Long Island, specialized in, as the name says, jazz standards. So it was sax, keyboard, bass, and drums. And we've gone through a few personnel changes here and there. We've been on hiatus for the last couple of years because everyone's been kind of going in new directions and what have you. I'm hoping to, as they say, get the band back together and continue what we started because it's been a great time. And really, I'm out in the Hamptons right now. And in the Hamptons, music, especially in the spring, summer, even early fall, music is everywhere. So we really got to kind of, spend a lot of time making a lot of great music together.
And how many years have you been a violinist for the South Bay String Quartet?
Well, that was another group that started in the early 90s, and we've played together on and off for about 30 years. Again, sometimes you go through personnel changes, people retire, move on, and what have you. But it's been pretty solid. We do a lot of good work out here, and a lot of performing, and just have a great time. That hardcore classical, for the most part. Although, if you ask for a couple of jazz standards, I know a guy who would do that for you.
And how many years have you been a fiddle player for the Peconic County Ramblers?
Peconic County Ramblers. Yeah, so that's been about 2 or 3 years, I think. I play fiddle for them, do a little bit of vocal work, some rhythm guitar sometimes, but essentially I'm playing fiddle with them. That's been it's about almost going on 3 years now, I think. A lot of fun. A very different vibe from all of the other things. A lot of traditional fiddle music from Ireland, Scotland, the U.S., just all over the place. A lot of really nice early jazz tunes and some classic rock. So it's also a nice mishmash of things.
Now let's talk about the band you co-founded, which is REEB, or REEB, or should I say the Real East End Brass.
That's
How
it.
did you came up with that name, and how many years was the band was in existence?
Well, we've been in existence for a little more than 6 years now. And we came up with a name during a rehearsal, just throwing ideas around. Now, out of the eight of us, seven of us are music teachers. So we kind of had this. We just actually our trumpet player started the band, and so, he was somebody who was just really getting into New Orleans brass and that kind of thing. And he was saying, I'll bet all of us out on the East End, we could put a band together and do this. What do you think? And so everyone said, yeah, okay, let's try it. So we started, and it just really took off. But it's been about 6 years. So the name happened during a rehearsal. So yeah, so we're a brass band. So the word brass had to be part of it, right? So you know what you were talking about. That made sense. And then we're all music teachers from the East End of Long Island. So East End made sense. So we felt it needed a little bit more than that. And we tried out a number of different words to kind of describe the sound, get a something to match the vibe. So we liked the idea that the band felt real, right? It wasn't contrived, not cookie cutter, not like a standard one size fits all wedding band, not all about image or anything else. It was just about a bunch of friends getting together to play music that we liked. And that was the point. We play what we like. So it was real. And so we kind of liked that thought. So then we noticed our initials, the E, E, and B, if you added an R to it, it looked like beer spelled backwards. So we thought,
Oh,
how can you miss? When you tell them that once, no one's ever going to forget. Real East End brass, REEB, is beer spelled backwards. And I'll bet everyone that hears this podcast is going to go home thinking exactly that same thing. So anyway, so that worked for us. And we've been kind of going strong ever since.
now is it kind of like you have a combination like the trumpets and the trombones as well as the tubas and everything?
Oh, absolutely. So, and now everyone being a music teacher has been a great advantage because people sing, they've been trained classically and traditionally, and we've all been in bands. We've been in ska bands and wedding bands and jazz bands. And myself, I've done everything from country to heavy metal and straight ahead swing and classical. So we have this huge collection of experiences, and everyone plays multiple instruments. But our standard configuration, especially for the New Orleans stuff we do, trumpet, tenor sax, trombone, and either bari sax or clarinet, sousaphone, guitar, bass, and drums. So we got a rhythm section. We're all up front with our brass, and we have a lead vocalist as well. So, and he's like he's a force of nature. So yeah, it's a great sound. I hope you have a chance to check out our first album, or you have a chance to come out to the East End one day and catch us. We keep moving ours. We played in Westbury at a Westbury Music Festival, and so we keep moving further west. So you never know, we might be in your neighborhood sometime soon.
Okay. Now, while you're not on tour, you have a day job as a music teacher and as an orchestra director. What's the name of the school that you teach music, and how many years have you been as an orchestra director as well as a music coordinator?
Well, I actually had retired in 2021, so I'm the most privileged member of the group. They're all working full time, and I happen to be. I've moved on from that, so I retired in 2021. I'm class of 21. That's my graduation year. But I was in public schools for 33 and a half years, and I began in Mineola schools, and then moved to East Hampton for the remaining 32 years. And so it's been a really good experience, and I taught a lot, but I also learned a lot. I have to be very honest. I learned a lot about human nature, a lot about people, a lot about music, and kind of opening doors. Right? You don't have to break them down. You just have to open them and walk through. So yeah, so it's great to have done it. It's great to be at this point where I'm now doing a lot of other things.
Now, I took up music education myself. I took it up
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
third grade in private school, and we had a music teacher, and she almost looked like Lindsay Wagner with the Bionic Woman. And I didn't take up music education again until I went to junior high school. I went to
Mm,
IS 144, or they call it now MS 144 in the Bronx. And I took up music
okay.
education in the sixth grade, seventh grade, and eighth grade. So this was a little different from the one I was in the third grade, but this one is
Oh
a
yeah.
little harder. You have to know, the instruments, but do you know how to play in musical notes? So
Hmm.
it's kind of like mathematics when you have like fourth, eighth of a note. That's like mathematics. So you're playing the
Yeah.
piano. And I also took up piano lessons too. Not just for being, you know, to stardom, but for playing for fun. But it's like when you are really committed, if you really
Yeah.
wanted to do something, it takes practice, practice,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
practice. So most of the time, I can't be outside with my friends playing
That's
outside.
it.
You got to
That's it.
be in there
Hmm.
doing your craft, and you got to know all of your notes. And the same thing with songwriting. It's like if
Yeah.
you're writing a song that's like English or writing, you have to know the words that put in a song. So let me ask you this question while we're on this topic of why is music education so important?
Well, before I answer that, I kind of want to circle back. I have to tell you that probably from the earliest time I can remember, I spent most of my life in the music room, playing instruments, singing, doing anything and everything. So I'm not sure how I got any other education aside from music, but I managed to do it. But I lived there. That was heart and soul. Um, and that's kind of where that comes from my music education perspective. So it's life, it's culture, it's history, it's art, it's soul, it's emotion, spiritual and intellectual. There is so much learning that goes on in a music classroom. Instrumental, vocal, theater, any of those things. There's so much that happens personally and intellectually and emotionally. So it's an important part of every human being's existence, right? So it should be part of every child's development. We shouldn't just give it to some and not to others. Everybody should be involved in music in some way. It enriches. It's brain development. It's team building, problem solving, social interaction and engagement, community engagement. Right. Every time you send those kids out there to perform something, to play for their peers, to play at maybe play at a nursing home, to play at some public event, even playing a halftime show, right? Music, you're engaging the community in an important way, um, and it's personal and cultural expression, right? I mean, that's where I found my voice was in music. So, and as you said, it's hard work, a lot of skill development. It takes perseverance, a little talent, a little magic, but mostly a lot of hard work. So reaches places in a person that you really can't reach any other way, especially for kids. And for some kids, this is the thing that matters most to them in their day, and it can be their island, their joy, it's the sweet spot in the middle of all of this growing up time, and so and for other kids, it can be that one thing they do best. I had a student that absolutely was a perfect example of this. It was the one place that he experienced success. He had a lot of learning, delays and all kinds of different things going on. And so it was hard for him. His middle school was very, very challenging for him. But the one thing he did, he played the viola. He loved the viola. That was his thing. And he was so connected to that experience. And every time he was in my classroom, he could soar. He was, at either equal or head and shoulders above the rest of his peers in that moment. That was his thing. That was his sweet spot. That's what gave him an island of maybe respite from all the rest that was going on. And he was able to take that confidence he got in my class and keep pushing through. And he made it through high school and is doing great things now. And he still plays the viola now. He's got to be 30, I don't know, I've lost track, like 30 something years old. He's still playing the viola as he was in school because he loved it It was part of his life, but that was the place that he found refuge, you know. So even if you just do that, it's worth it. I mean, music is incredibly cool, a lot of fun, but it's also great learning and every kind of development, every kind of human development. And that's why I'm really incredibly passionate about it.
You brought up the viola. Is it kind of like the cello, or is it kind of similar to the violin or the fiddle?
Well, it's funny you would say because the viola is it's a little bit of an outlier. It's played like a violin, but it's larger than a violin. So it's got a deeper voice as a result. A little bit lower. There's some overlap between violin and viola in terms of their range, but the viola goes a little bit lower, violin goes higher. It's got the same strings as a cello, but an octave higher. So it kind of lives in that middle ground. They actually refer to it in French as, I believe, as alto. That's one of the names for viola, either alta or alto. I think alto. So it kind of fits in that spot right in between a violin and a cello. It's its own thing, though. It's got a very different voice and a very different coloration to the tones. So people that are passionate about, I have a viola, I love it very much. And people who are passionate about viola, that is so, it's a unique thing. And they get drawn to it. It lives in a totally different space.
Wow. So every time I listen to like, MFSB, because you can hear that low cello or the viola that you just mentioned, or like if I'm listening to some Curtis Mayfield, because he'll have his own string section. When you hear that low cello or viola, I said, oh, okay. Now I know the difference between the violin that pitched up high, and then when you hear the cello or the viola, it's low.
It's going to be a little lower. Yeah.
Wow. So thanks for explaining that, because
sure.
though I know the difference between the violin, which is high, and the cello, but I didn't know anything about the viola. So when I go to like different different clubs, or like to different jazz clubs, and when I see different types of instruments that the musicians may play, it's, I would probably say, I know the big one is the cello, but which one is the viola? So I would have to pay close attention when you hear the artists, when they introduce everyone on the violin, that person, or the cello, that person, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So that the viola lives right in between that space between violin and cello, and just kind of keeps that middle ground. And so, sometimes you don't always catch it in the mix, but if you know what you're listening for, you kind of get used to picking it out. You say, "Oh man, that's a sweet line," just going in the middle there and just kind of filling in that space. The viola gets to do that. Sometimes you hear them solo, especially if you're trying to get into a really poignant moment in a film or something. But very often you hear a string quartet or something like that, or you hear a string section. Like for Barry White, you'll listen to it in a lot of violins, but then there'll be some viola moments. You hear it's like listening to an alto singer, right? Like Leontine Price, that's like her range. She was not a soprano; she was more like an alto, and that's what a viola range is like. And it just kind of hits that spot. It's kind of cool.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing that, because I would never know which one it is. Now, here's a question that I always ask: living or dead, which musician you wish you wanted to meet or to perform with?
Well, I thought about that a little bit, and excuse me, and I have to tell you, I'm going to have to give you two, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay, so from the classical world, and for a lot of reasons, I think Beethoven, right? And that might seem like a pat answer everybody would give, but his music is inventive, and it's expressive, and it's challenging to play and challenging to kind of understand sometimes, right? Came from a rough childhood, worked hard to become a brilliant pianist and composer. He was a little bit of a radical in his day, which I kind of like. He got to shake things up, kind of bohemian, independent from the traditional music business, the way it was being done before. You used to have to be sponsored by a wealthy priest or somebody in the church or maybe a nobleman. They would sponsor you and take care of you financially, and you'd kind of work for them. Mozart and Haydn were like that. They were like, they were employees. Beethoven was his own man. People did pay for his work, and he did have sponsors, but he was very much his own man. So I really like that. Now, something else, he also seemed to rise above a lot of the nonsense and prejudices of his day that were really common. So he wrote, I believe it was, yes, it was the Kreutzer Violin Sonata that he wrote for a black artist, George Bridgetower, at a time when it was just not commonly done. Now, we're talking Beethoven, so he was living in Germany. Yeah, but George Bridgetower. Now, they got into a falling out for whatever reason at some point. I think maybe one of them said something rude about the other's girlfriend or some such thing. It depends on which history you read. They had a falling out, and Beethoven scratched out the dedication and changed the name and put somebody else's name on it. That's why it's known as the Kreutzer Sonata, because Kreutzer was another violin soloist, and he just said, "Yeah, I'm done with you, man. Now I'm just gonna change who I dedicate this to." But it should be called the Bridgetower Sonata, because that's who it was originally dedicated to. And I thought, I mean, all of their personal fighting aside, I thought, this is Germany in like the late 17, early 1800s, unheard of. Say, but that's kind of the guy Beethoven was. He didn't stand for convention so much. But I have to go more conventional. I mentioned her before, Roberta Flack. I absolutely love her writing. I love her voice. She delivers more heart and soul when she sings than almost anyone else I know. But sweet. I mean, she can dig deep, but she also has a lot of a real sweet voice. And an album I'm completely obsessed with of hers is called First Take. I don't know if you know it. To me, that is just, it's like earthy, it's organic, it's natural, it's brilliant, and completely understated in so many ways. It's not pretentious or slick or overly commercial or produced. And the backing band, Ron Carter, Bucky Pizzarelli, and Ray Lucas. Ray Lucas on drums, and Ron Carter on bass. You don't even have to say anything else. That's pretty much the end of the conversation. So like everything in that, for me, everything in that album is perfect. It was recorded in 10 hours, which is insane. So I've been listening to that album for about 50 years, and it's still fresh every time I go to it. And so I would love to meet her. I think her work is absolutely just outrageously good. The work she did with Donny Hathaway a little bit later, brilliant, just brilliant. I've got nothing but tremendous respect.
Wow, because like 10 hours, it's like when you're in the recording studio, many people be like less than that, but 10 hours? Wow.
That's it. That's it. Lay out the microphones, and here we go.
Yeah, my late mother had her debut LP, First Take. And, I was just listening to it, but not everything, but just listening to a couple of tracks. But then there was a song that was on her debut LP, and it was called The First Time Ever
Yes.
I Saw Your Face. And this is the first time listening to it. Not until like 1971, when you hear those commercials that number one, hit of the 70s. And I didn't realize it was Roberta Flack. And I was watching this movie called Play Misty for Me, which starred Clint Eastwood and Jessica Walter and Don Mills and Clarice Taylor. And then when they played that song in that movie, and then that song was re-released once again in 1971, and the song went to number one on Billboard's Hot 100 Pop Singles charts. She won a Grammy for that song, and later that song was later used in so many commercials. And also, you mentioned Donny Hathaway. She would be best remembered for doing duets with Donny Hathaway. Where is the love? You got a friend. And the closer I get to you, just to name a few. And Beethoven, I already know about Beethoven all my life. Best known for a fifth of Beethoven. And when I was in the 5th grade at PS 108 in the Bronx, New York, and it was on December 23rd on a Friday morning. And, my principal would let us know it was playing Beethoven. It was playing it from 9 until 12 noon. And the only Beethoven I know of, from the Charlie Brown specials,
Oh,
Schroeder,
right.
who would play the
Yeah, yeah.
piano, and
Yep.
then that scene from a Charlie Brown Christmas, and Lucy
Yep.
was asking him, "What kind of Christmas music is that?" Beethoven Christmas music. What does Beethoven got to do with Christmas?
That's too good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. They do take his the theme from his Ninth Symphony, which is called oh my goodness, oh, just lost what that. And in any event, but the theme from his Ninth Symphony often gets taken out and used at Christmas because it has a certain musical connection for people. I'm not sure why. It just seems to. But even the movie with Bruce Willis, oh my goodness, Die Hard, the first Die Hard movie, ends up using that. And of course, there are Christmas trees, and it's a Christmas party that starts the movie. And you end up having Beethoven's Ninth Symphony being played in the middle of that. So if there's more Beethoven Christmas music, I guess it's that Ninth Symphony.
Yes. Now, here on the Black Soul Music Experience, I always ask my guests who are the top 10 artists of all time. So since this is a jazz episode, I'll be having Troy to give us his top 10 jazz artists of all time. Now, here's how it works. We start like a top 10 countdown, and we start at number 10. Which one was the best jazz artist performer but didn't get any recognition? And then we work our way up to number 1, who was the outstanding jazz artist of all time. That jazz artist crossed over to pop or R&B or soul or hip-hop markets. That artist received platinum or double platinum or triple platinum. That artist won a Grammy or a BET award, or that artist was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or that artist performed on Great Performances or Sesame Street on PBS, or he had some of their specials on HBO or Showtime or Primetime on CBS or NBC or ABC. So Troy, I'm going to let you start off. So I'm going to start off with number 10. So who should be at number 10?
Oh, wow. At number 10, I'm going to put in Coleman Hawkins.
Yes.
I'm very old school. I gotta be straight up about that.
Yes, Coleman Hawkins, one of the greatest jazz of all time. Yes.
And and his name doesn't always make it to the top. Jazz folks know it, but outside of that, it's not always as clear. Okay, so let me go to another one for number 9.
Number 9.
It's a rough call. I'm gonna have to say Ella Fitzgerald.
Yes, the one and only Ella Fitzgerald, known for her scatting and everything. But I best remember her for that Memorex commercial that she did back in the 70s when you had that glass. If she goes
glass
up to
breaking.
high pitched note and the glass.
Oh, yeah.
So she'll be best remembered for that one.
I think so.
Yes.
But I mean, her whole body of work is just, it's tremendous. I was kind of flipping through different things and looking online and saying, how many of these tunes do I know? Like her version of these tunes. And you just keep going through and through and through and through, and she's just this massive catalog of work that it's all just over the top, superior. So, she had to be in there.
Yes,
no question.
So rest in peace to Ella Fitzgerald. Who should be at number 8?
I'm putting Dizzy Gillespie in there. I love his style. Inventive, bringing in lots of different influences. He had his own style. He had his own way, and got to really respect that. All the my horn's bent, okay, my cheeks puffed out when I play and whatever, and my elementary school teacher said, "Don't ever play trumpet that way." I said, "Yeah, but man, if I could play like this, then why wouldn't I want to do that? You know." Don't. So all of that stuff. That's all nonsense. That's all shtick. Hardcore. The man was legendary and deserves every bit of attention and every bit of fame he got because he earned it and he worked it and he brought jazz to another place.
Yes.
So
And he'll be best remembered for being as a guest on Stevie Wonder's song "Do I Do." And when I saw the music video and I heard Stevie Wonder says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have a pleasure to present on my album, Mr. Dizzy Gillespie Blow." And I was like, "Oh, Dizzy! Oh, you got Dizzy on your music video, Stevie. Wow." So yes, he's best remembered for everything you just mentioned. Whether it's bebop or hard bop or regular jazz.
yeah, yeah,
Dizzy was on the scene.
absolutely. And I got to
Number
go with a. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Which
Yes,
number is
number
this?
seven. Number
Number
seven.
7. Okay. So, and it's tough to put some of these guys in different categories and who's 1, 2, 3, 4. Giving them a number because everyone's got their lane that just they made it work and they were unique and whatever. So it's kind of hard to break that down. I'm going to put Louis Armstrong in there, and in slot number 7. Now
The one and only Louis Armstrong. He's been
Right?
there from the day he was born in 1900 until he passed away in 1971. The one and only
Yeah.
Louis Armstrong, best known for "Hello, Dolly." And I remember watching the 007 James Bond movie called Her Majesty's Secret Service. And
Yeah.
he did a song called "We Have All the Time in the World." So best known for that, and also "What a Wonderful World," and that song was
Yeah.
later used in the 1987 movie "Good Morning Vietnam" with Robin Williams. So
Right.
every time when you hear some of the radio stations, they'll play something from the music, from the movies, that is. So it's kind of like very refreshing. So rest in peace to Pops or Satchmo Louis
Satchmo.
Armstrong.
I got to say too, I love his earlier stuff. Yeah, I think of him like a pioneer. Also, I mean, he just raised the bar on trumpet solos. He just where he took things, and he was starting from the very early beginnings of jazz as we think of it, and he kind of carried it. He took the ball and carried it somewhere new, and just expanded on it. And I have to tell you, I like the earlier stuff even more than the later stuff because I think he was at his most inventive and just so at that time it was fresh. People weren't doing what he was doing. He was pushing the envelope. So that's why I put him in that spot in particular.
Okay, number 6.
I'm going to put in Ron Carter.
Yes,
Legendary.
Ron Carter, the one who plays the big boom, 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 boom.
Oh yeah, as a bass player, just totally unparalleled. If I'm not mistaken, I think he also plays the cello. I don't recall if he did that on anyone's albums, but I think he also plays the cello. But he is, I mean, when you listen to the way he set things up, the way he supported, like anytime he was playing with somebody, his soloing was great, obviously, but what he did underneath, that unless you're really kind of listening to what's going on underneath, you don't know. He's like massaging that whole arrangement. He's supporting it and lifting it up and going around it and beside it and inside it and upside down. He's just all over the place in a beautiful way. He never gets in the way. But he's foundational. And I don't think there's very much out there that goes beyond Ron Carter. His daughter is a brilliant jazz violin player. I believe it's his daughter, Regina.
Wow.
And she's she's phenomenal. Someone to listen to is Regina Carter if you have a chance.
Okay, we're up to number 5.
Number 5, I have to put in Duke Ellington.
Yes, the one and only Duke Ellington, best known for playing Satin Doll and so many other instrumental tunes. There's some things
Yeah.
I may not know of, but when I once worked at WVOX radio in New Rochelle, New York, and their format was big band, jazz, and swing. So I said, let me play some Duke Ellington and put that in the mix. So that's what they're known for. They like it regular jazz, not that hardcore stuff that they not
Right,
into.
right.
So Duke Ellington, one of the greatest jazz musicians ever. So we'll put him
Hey,
at number 5.
and most people don't know, but he wrote 4 symphonies.
Hmm.
Okay, and one that gets played often is called Black, Brown, and Beige. And I think if you have a chance to listen to it, you hear a totally different side of him. So he's thinking, yeah, I got the jazz band thing going on, but I kind of have the symphony orchestra thing in my head too. Let's do that. So as we were talking before, what are the rules? What are the walls? What are the limits? What are the barriers you put up? He didn't put up those barriers. So I have the recordings of his symphonies, and I take them out and listen to those from time to time too, alongside straight ahead jazz. So there was a lot. The man was obviously legendary, but there was an awful lot going on there that people didn't even know about.
Wow. Yes, so we'll put him at number 5. All right, who should be at number 4?
I think you got to put Miles in number 4.
Ah, yes, Miles Davis, the one and only. He had kept up with the times, whether it's bebop or regular jazz, or got into some classical stuff. And like I said earlier, when I once worked at AM 1460 WBOX in New Rochelle, New York, and I had to play something during the 8 o'clock hour because I had to put in the commercials and stuff like that, and I had to take care of their sister station. So when I went to the library, I picked up something that will hold for 16 minutes. So he would play 16 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes. You will never know. He's just a wonderful jazz musician, and he crossed boundaries, whether it's regular jazz, and he experimented fusion jazz in the late 60s and into the 70s. And then he got into the 80s. He was doing some remake of Michael Jackson's Human Nature and Cyndi Lauper's Time After Time. So Miles had kept up with the time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and he is inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So you never know what Miles have went through so many genres and different tastes. So rest in peace to the one and only Miles Davis. All right, who should be at number 3?
Okay, it's going to be a little controversial, but because I'm telling, I'm not just old school. I'm way old school. I love Jelly Roll Morton. I think this man, as a songwriter, very clever. I think as a musician, fantastic. Again, we're talking about the foundational years, right? The years that really built jazz to be what it is. I'd almost want to give a shout out to King Oliver too, because we're talking about folks that really they laid the groundwork for all of these other folks in a way that was exciting and dynamic and whatever. Jelly Roll, I don't really not the Jelly Roll that's out there right now. Jelly Roll Morton. Just want to make sure we're all clear.
Yes.
Yeah, different creature, but just the ease with which he played, sang, performed, and his writing. It was just like, I don't know. I always found his writing really like uplifting, very joyful. There's just something about it. He just seemed very unaffected and very let's just hang out and play and jam, and it was all good. So I put him up there because I like his composing especially.
Okay, Jelly Roll Morton at number 3. All right, we're up to number 2.
I think I got to give number 2 to Train, no question in my mind.
John Coltrane, yes, the one and only John Coltrane, best known for his rendition of My Favorite Things. So the first time I heard his version, he stretched it out far wide. He made it like 13 minutes. Now, you talk about the Christmas song, My Favorite Things. Now you got to hear John Coltrane's version. He
Oh yeah.
stretched it far
Uh-huh.
wide. He took
Yeah.
that song, stripped it, stretched it far wide to 13 minutes. I'm telling you. I mean, he did it all. So I
But
have
you
John
loved.
Coltrane's album, My Favorite Thing. So I will be
Mm,
playing it, and I played it at WVOX at that time. So just to fill in that spot. So while I'm taking care of the station, and let play some
mm-hmm.
John Coltrane in between. While you're doing the other thing, checking on the power, and then take care of the other sister station, giving their commercials. So I can put that in, and by the time when it's finished, on to the next track.
There you go. I
One
got to
more.
say, who else could do it though? Who else had the chops? Who else had the inventiveness, right? The musical vocabulary and the kind of like who could set up that architecture to make that song, which is like a minute and 30 seconds in its original form from The Sound of Music, um, maybe 2 minutes, and to stretch it like that. And you don't ever want it to end. You can go to 13 minutes and say, hey, is there more? Let's, who else could do that? No, nobody else had that kind of skill set. Nobody had that tonal imagination. He just brought all of that to it. So, yeah. So
Okay.
he, that definitely a good number two.
Right. And who should be at number one?
I got to go with Charlie Parker.
Ah, the bird, Charlie
Gotta.
Parker. Yes, the one and only. One of the songs that I played when I was at WVOX was called Star Eyes. So
Mm-hmm.
once you hear that sax on the background, it was like,
Mm-hmm.
wow. So it was really refreshing. And they did a movie on him in 1988, and Forrest Whitaker played the
Forrest
role
Whitaker, yes.
of Charlie Parker, and Clint Eastwood directed the movie. And Clint is a
Mm-hmm.
huge fan of jazz, so I
Yeah.
mentioned Play
Yeah.
Misty for Me, and
Mm-hmm.
he directed the movie Bird. So yes, the one and only Charlie
Amazing.
Parker at number one.
Yeah, I thought Forrest Whitaker really caught the. He really kind of caught the emotion. He really caught the spirit. I think he did a great job with that. And I kind of a shout out to Clint Eastwood. He actually plays the piano pretty well. He's done a couple of movie scores himself, which I thought not bad for a cowboy actor. There's a little bit more to that guy than spaghetti westerns. So
Right.
a lot of respect for that too. It was good work and I'm glad that they brought that to the screen. That was
Yes.
good film.
Well, Troy, thank you so much for being here on my Black Soul Music Experience podcast.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for all the contributions that you made and everything that you taught the students about what real music is all about. And your continued success on that other band, the brass band. So
Thank
when I
you.
get a chance, I'll get a chance to look for it on YouTube. So, and all of the jazz musicians that I know, Beethoven that I know, Christmas Time and everything. And of course, the Fifth of Beethoven, which you may not know,
Oh yeah.
has been remade so many times.
Right,
Walter
right,
Murphy
right.
did it in
Mm-hmm.
a disco version. So that
Right,
was a
right.
little twist on there. So it's everything. So thank you. You've given me food for thought.
Great pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. You can catch our band, Real East End Brass. You can find our homepage is realeastendbrass.com. Just one big long word, realeastendbrass.com. You can find a link to our debut album, Music to Your Life, and lots of other links to just all kinds of content. And you get a good idea of what we're all about, and it's a good time. And hope to be able to play in your neighborhood or have you out in our neighborhood, and we could. I'd look forward to being able to kind of catch up and share what we do. New Orleans, modern brass band, funk, pop, soul, R&B, some classic rock. We even throw in some country music. So, it's a good time.
Okay, yes. Well, I'm no stranger to Long Island, so when I go by car or by the Long Island Railroad. So I'm no stranger to Long Island, which is best known for Jones Beach and when you take I-495, the LIE, go out all the way out. So I'm no stranger to Long Island. So thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely.
Download all the artists that we have talked about on this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. Visit iTunes.com, Spotify.com, or purchase a CD at Amazon.com. And make sure you follow the Real East End Brass. Go to REEB, that's REEB.com, and check out all of the musical things that you will love. I promise you that. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to check out this interview, please subscribe by going to riverside.fm/studio/Samuel-Wilson Jr.'s. Don't forget to add the S at the end, -studio. And we'll be posting this episode on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And please pass it on. Thank you for joining me as I close out this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience.
Well, that's about it for this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. I'm Sam Wilson Jr. Thank you for joining me, and please tune in next week for an all-new episode. The Black Soul Music Experience podcast is sponsored by the support of listeners like you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe by going to riverside.fm/studio/Samuel-Wilson Jr.'s -studio. And don't forget to check out my audio podcast episodes by becoming a member and subscribe to patreon.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. You can leave your feedbacks, comments, and replies by visiting my Facebook homepage. Go to facebook.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. You can also tweet me on X, a.k.a. Twitter, at Sam Wilson Jr. 66. As always, parting, remember this: reach for the top and your dreams will come true, and it can happen to you. From all of us, take care, God bless, thanks for listening, have a good week, and please be safe.